Hello and welcome back to this video, which is a tutorial on Excel. And in the previous video we left it at discussing how to use fixed constant values in your calculations. So now, so we are here on the list. Now comes the functions. So let me just delete this on the list. So there can be various functions that you can use in Excel. So you can write out the function as we did it here. You can write any sort of function to that. But you can also find specific functions that Excel can help you with. For example, to calculate an average. So in order to calculate an average value, for example, for this column, I will show you how to do that. So you would press the equal sign, and then it would start typing the name of the function. Typically, you would know the name of that. So in this case, it's average. So you can see that it then gives you the name average. So then you can double click on that, and if you double click on that, you can also just write it out average and then put a bracket, left-handed bracket down. That's equally fine. Okay, I just double clicked on it because that's sort of the quick way. So then it already indicates, it gives you a hand on that how to define average. So how to define those numbers that you want to calculate the average on. So in this case, it says put the number in, then put a comma there, then comes a space, then the next number, and so forth and so on, and close it with a bracket. So you could start saying, okay, I need this number here, I need a comma, and I need a space here, and I need another number here, and a comma, and a space, and then another number, right? Close the bracket, and then calculate the average of that. And then it will return you the average of that number. Sorry, I didn't mean to give used to this, but this. Fine. Okay. But there is an easier way to do that as well. You don't have to click on each one and put the comma there. So the easier way is to, now I'm getting back to what there was before. So average, and then what you can do also is to select the whole line by just clicking on it and then keeping the left button pressed, and you pull it down, and then you basically have the whole column of numbers inserted in here. Okay. Now if I close the parentheses and I click enter, on enter, then I can calculate the average. Yeah, this is a very, I write it down, average. Okay. Typical calculations would also ask you to do something like the standard deviation. So if you have a mean value or average value, then you can also calculate the standard deviation of the same set of numbers. Okay, some basic statistics, right? So the standard deviation would tell you something about the error or the average difference between these values. Okay. So how do you do that? You calculate the standard deviation. The deviation, let's see. So I put that here. In order to show you the text, I will go up here and double click. You see what happens? And I double click it, and that means that it will widen the column. Okay. So so now let's come here, press equal sign, and then start hoping that we will have a function like standard deviation. There is none. Okay, so you could press, okay, SD, it starts with SD for sure. And now I will let you know, so it's this stdev.p. So there are many functions. Most of them, don't worry about it, you will never use them. So it's just this one, stdev. Okay, there is another one. I have no idea what that does. You can try. So you put that down, double click, and you can now again select the numbers, and it will give you the standard deviation, and that's one, of course. Well, it's not, of course. Okay, so that's our standard deviation between these numbers. So I have the mean, the standard deviation. Okay, now I characterize this number set. Okay, you may have something like cost items or other items with a value roughly around the same value. Right? So you would want to get the average, say, salary of people and the standard deviation of the salaries of people. So that would be a basic statistical operation. You could also add to that. It would be very interesting if you have a large set, huge set with many numbers, not just this number. Then you could also compute the minimum and maximum values in the set. Minimum salary, minimum consumption, maximum consumption. And the way to do that is very similar. So you go here, max, and for that it's actually just max value. So I just double click here, and once again, same column. And guess what the maximum is? It's 6.5. Very good. Sorry. You could also ask what the minimum value is. So similarly, double click, give me the minimum value. There you are. So these are simple functions. You can also guess that there are many other functions, sinus, cosinus, cosine, tangent. You can also raise 10 to the power of, say, 3. Okay. Use the hat, and it's 1,000. But in Excel, you can also use this highly confusing thing called XP. It's not it doesn't return the exponential of a number, but it's sorry. So if you use just the E, I think that's no. Okay, sorry. I didn't make sense there. Anyway, there is a confusing part, but I won't discuss it here. Sorry. Good. So now we are done with this. Let's go and create a table. So here I have these functions, and I could quickly create a table by just filling this gap with something. Let's do something here that I just pull this here. Okay. Does that make sense? It didn't make sense because it's there, so never mind. I will just pull this down. Boom. Okay, and now we have the same values all through and through. Anyway, but this lends itself nicely to create a table. Okay. So in order to create a table, that's it. You could say, well, this is already a table. You could do certain things in Excel if you wanted to. You could perhaps reduce the decimals here. So we discussed this earlier. by going here and then making it uniform all through. You may also say, well, I only want to change the decimals of these numbers, and then you go here. Okay. After all, you don't need those decimals for anything. You can also put them in the center of the cells by clicking here. Okay. You can make these go to center. You can also bold, make them bold, make them large, make them colored. So I will just make these bold and I make this blue. Okay, why not? Okay, then what else can we do? We can also make a mesh around them. So for the mesh, it's here, super easy. Just put all borders there. There you go. They are all bordered. You can also create a frame with this kind of thick outside border. Then there is this. Okay. Fine. You can create backgrounds, yeah, as we discussed this earlier, with various colors, adding colors here. Okay. Just creating some that can be useful. You can write here something like table. As you can see, what's happened before I wrote table, I put down a letter, tabulated A, and then it tries to guess what I want to say by repeating something that I have already written in the table. So that's again another thing in Excel that you can use or may not. Okay, now back to our table. You can also do all sorts of things here. And now what you can also do is to merge cells, and that you can do, or unmerge for that matter. You can go here and you merge them, and that means that you have this whole thing now, these two cells merged. If you don't want that, unmerge. That's it. You can also you may notice that the format has changed, because in the middle, let me just go a little bit closer. You can see that the formatting is, so it doesn't have the mesh here now. So it messes things up a little bit. In order to, you can also copy the formatting of a cell. And for that, you can use the brush. So you would go on the cell that you really like. I like this one, for example, which has the yellow background and this. And then you go to the brush, format painter. I don't know why it's painting. Anyway, but you click on that, you like that, and then you see the little paint brush next to it, and you drop it. You basically just have to drop it where you would like to format the cell the way you like. If you don't, now let's see what happens if you merge these two. That formatting has disappeared. Okay, so this merging would remove that. So I will just create now a special cell with all sorts of things. So let's see what is taken over here. So what this cell has is two formatting, right? It has a yellow background and the blue colored numbers. So now I do this. I want to copy the formatting of this cell to here. And I copied it. And as you can see, it took both aspects, characteristics of the cell to the other one. So it's both the background and the color of the letters. If I do merging here, yeah, I can merge them. Okay, so this is how you can use those functions. Anything else here? Oh yeah. This is important. This is actually a An important function I didn't mention in the function, so let me just do this now. Summing up numbers. So you have a whole suite of numbers, say income or whatever, that you want to sum up and put it into this row instead of average. So you could also then just say, okay, I want to put a line here in between that will give me the sum of these values that are here in this column. Then what you do is you would select this part and then pick the frame. So you go to the frame of this, you can see, and you click left click and you pull it, and then you can take it any way you want. Then you drop it one row below. You say, okay, I want here to put the sum. So I want to calculate the sum of these. Now you may start and you just say, okay, this plus this plus this plus this plus this plus, I'm going to do it now, all the way. There you go. So now you have the sum of all those numbers. Okay, pretty tedious. By the way, when you click here, you can see that it helps you to find the cell by showing you the same color here as the color of the cell is. Okay? Now, back to the function. So how can you sum it up instead of just doing all this plus, plus, plus? So what you can do is put a dollar sign, a famous dollar sign here, and use the function of sum. So you start writing sum in there, and then you double click on this, and then the rest is the same. So you want to sum up all these values. And there you go. That's your sum. Let me just show you something else. It's not only columns that you can put into this sum, but you could also put the whole table in there. Haha. If you do that, then the sum will be slightly more than that, right? Okay. You can also see that the average changed. You would ask, why the average of these numbers didn't change. So something is wrong with this cell. So just click on that. And as you can see, the problem is that the average cell is also calculating this, taking into account this value. So as you moved it, this function also moved. So if you click here, you can see that it goes all the way to number 15. Number 15, the row number 15 is this one, right? You don't need that. So this kind of maneuvering can sort of place bugs in your calculations. So just to remove this, either by typing 14, and then it's the, you could see that. I do it again. See? 14. And it's now that. And that's it. Check out this one as well. That hasn't changed. I mean, this is Excel. Excel has it. With this function, it didn't carry over with the others it did. So anyway, never mind. So sum, it's always useful to double check what you're doing. Basically, that's the message from that maneuvering. So now you learned how to do the summing. This function sum is in fact so popular that Microsoft created a whole icon for it, and you can see it here, sum, auto sum. So auto sum would mean that you can just select this column and then you just say auto sum, and then it creates that function that we just did there. So it's a different way of doing exactly the same thing. Okay. In fact, under this icon, you can also find some of those functions that we discussed. It also has something like count the numbers. So you could also say, well, count how many numbers I have in this row. You click here, and it will return you the number that are in this column. Since there is a 0 here, if you like, there are 8 numbers in this column. You may have a column with 10,600, and so That's why it's important to have these kind of functions, not for these small data sets. Let me just remove this coloring for a second. By coming here and say no fill, there will be no fill. So you just select it. I selected the whole thing. Let me just go back to remove some of this formatting, the background. I selected all the area. I should have just selected this area and go here, click there, theme colors, and there is something called no fill. No fill. Good. Okay. Good. So you can also now pull this function all the way here, and it will calculate the number of values there. It will do the same thing for all the columns above, right? In this case, count the numbers there. You could also say, well, don't count the numbers, but make the sum of all those columns. True. That, so, okay. Good. So we have, now I pull this all the way here. Could have pulled it all the way from here. Why don't we do that so that I also adjust a little bit the decimals. I can also pull all the other ones. Look. This is really the power of Excel. Because now you can do large sets of calculations without any problem with large speed. You just pull it like this, and then you made basically with these few pulls hundreds of calculations that you would do in a punch calculator. Yeah? You could also accelerate this, and you just say, well, here I select all these functions that I have here, and I wanted to do it for all those numbers, and you can just come to here, the bottom corner, and pull it. There you go. All those values, so the total values are here now. The average of each column is calculated. The standard deviation is calculated. The maximum mean values. Okay, so very useful. So that's about tables, some more functions, and now let's see some more things about how to then copy it and use it in Word.